Okay. Okay, so the topic is going to be sheet metal fabrication. And I'm going to go ahead and make a sort of a chart here. I'll keep referring back to this. You may want to do the same. You may want to have a page where you keep this. So it's going to be chair number 1 versus chair number 2.
Are we going to get our quizzes back? Maybe,
Eventually. Yeah, no, we'll grade them in class. I have one student that still needs to take the quiz, so waiting on that. It's my fault, not hers. I keep forgetting that she needs to take it. Okay, so chair number 1 is going to be aluminum. And guess what I'm going to ask you to do? Select the grade. So it'll be a different grade of aluminum than the ones you've been working with, because you'll want to choose an aluminum that bends nicely, doesn't crack and break like the 6061 would. Chair number 2 is going to be CRS. And CRS, that's normally what people call it in the industry, but it's an abbreviation for cold rolled steel. And this is your basic steel that's used in a lot of metal products. The lockers out in the hallway are probably cold rolled steel. Let's see, is there anything on this desk? No, so there's no good examples in this room. But anyway, lockers in the hall. That box up in the corner is, if it's plastic or metal, I think it's metal, it's probably cold rolled steel. It's very inexpensive, it forms really easily. It's really strong stuff, so it's got a lot of good qualities to it. Okay, so for fastening your aluminum parts together, or on chair number 1, you're going to use rivets. I'll talk about rivets in a bit. And for chair number 2, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to weld. You're going to weld parts, and then you're going to use pens with machine screws. For finishing on chair number 1, you're going to use gold allodyne. And for finishing on chair number 2, you're going to use powder coat. And I'm going to talk about the difference between paint and powder. I'll probably talk about that on Tuesday. We'll get to it today. For putting holes and for cutting the shapes of your parts on chair number 1, you're going to use a turret punch. And for chair number 2, you're going to use a laser. I'm going to do a quick sketch of sort of what these chairs might end up looking like, just to give you an idea. Okay, so let me explain some of the things on this first chair that I've got here. So when you're using a, oh, I'm sorry, that's the other thing. You're going to use for bending, you're going to use what's called a brake. I think it's AKE, not EAK. Yeah, it's called brake forming. And chair number 2, you're going to use rollers. Okay, so in most sheet metal brake forming, what you want to do is bend a right angle on your sheet, something like that, or maybe an angle that looks like that, or an angle that looks like that. So angles are preferred. What you don't want to do in brake forming, so this is brake forming. Actually, I won't tell you what you shouldn't do. I'll go ahead and show you how the brake forming process works.
Is it a vertical or like an older style brake or one like a modern one?
Well, I guess I don't know what you mean by that.
The modern one is like a V and then there's a piece that presses down on it.
Okay,
And
yeah, I haven't
older
seen-
style ones are the ones you lift.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, so it has the modern ones, the ones that we'd be using. So actually, I should back up here a little bit. The sheet metal process, usually what you do is the first thing you do is you punch. And then after punching, then that's when you usually do your forming after that. And then the third thing would be fasteners. Sometimes we do that before forming, it just depends. Fasteners like pens. And weld if you're doing any welding. Or rivets. And then finishing, which could be paint or powder or iodine or a number of different types of finishes, anodizing. Sometimes they'll do they'll put the coating on the material before it's punched at the very beginning, but more commonly it's done at the end. So, since I got out of order here, I'm going to get back on order. I'm going to do this step number 1, which is punching. And a turret punch looks something like this.
This is for chair number 1.
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, was this chair number 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's something like this. You'll see this on the field trip. You'll also find better pictures on the internet. But the idea is that up here, this is the turret up at the top. And in each of these holes is a different die. And the die is like, say if you want to do a round hole, your die is going to be a round shape like that. Actually, that would be like this. And if you're going to do a square hole, your die would look like this and have the little square punch on the bottom. It's just like a paper punch, but we're cutting through steel, so these dies are made out of very hard steel, tungsten. And so what happens is you take your sheet of metal here, And the metal sheet moves. It has grippers and it grabs the sheet and it moves it around. And then where you want a hole punched, the turret selects the punch that you want to use and will punch a hole through your sheet metal sheet, so you can do a series of holes on whatever pattern. This is controlled by a computer, not a person, so it gets programmed, and then it'll punch all the holes that you need. And depends what turret punch you have, how many different punches it can hold. But most shops have hundreds of different punch shapes available, and then they'll, I think the turret usually holds about 50 or something like that, maybe a little less, maybe 25. Now if you want to, say you want your piece to look like this, it comes out of a big sheet like this, but you want it to be a small piece, you don't want it to be that big. The old traditional way of doing this was using something called a shear to cut this off, but what's done in most sheet metal shops these days is they use a punch, and what they do is it's called nibbling, and I'll use different colors so you can see what I'm talking about. So you take a punch that has like sort of a rectangular shape to it, and you punch out that shape there, and then you hit it here, 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 you hit it here, etc. And you nibble your way around that part, and then you end up, that's how you cut it. The good thing about nibbling is that it's all automated. Again, it's just programmed in on the computer, so no person has to deal with a shear, the time and the danger dealing with the blade that can cut through steel. The bad thing about it is it leaves these little tiny nubs. We call them burrs. Oops, go away. So those little burrs can be kind of sharp. There's like these little tiny little pieces of metal where the two dies kind of came together and touched each other. So that has to be cleaned up afterwards because it's unsafe, so it gets ground off. But there's sort of an automated process for that too. So anyway, like I said, with your first chair number one, you're probably going to want to choose something that's pretty rectilinear, because this nibbling process, if you wanted to do a curve, say you wanted the back of your chair to be curved like this, the only way to do that, the only practical way to do it on a turret punch is to nibble again with a little square or rectangular punch. And so what you're going to end up with is facets, right? You're going to have a little straight piece, another straight piece, another straight piece. It won't really be a curve. You can kind of fake a curve, but it won't be a curve. So we usually try to stay away from curve shapes when we're using a turret punch. Let's see, what else? Much like plastic fabrication, these kind of sheets, and so it's good to sort of plan out your parts and how they would be arranged on a sheet for efficient use of the sheet. I believe in sheet metal it's not 4x8 but 4x10, I think. Let's assume that. I think that's what it is. So you kind of want to plan out your parts on the sheet. You can do outside corners. You can do like say you wanted to have a radius on your part on the outside. I use a different color here, green. So for a radius like that on the outside, they'll usually have a punch that can achieve that. It would be a punch that looks like that. And so you can do a nice outside corners. Those are pretty achievable. So you have your sheet, which 2. Specify the gauge. And the gauge is another word for thickness.